Radha Govind Gopinath Madan Mohan Jiu ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Jiu ki jai. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiu ki jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga ki jai. Shri Nrsinga Bhagavan ki jai. Jai Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mahabhagavat Srila Gaurkishore Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Shri Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Gauriya Vedanta Charya Baladev Jibusam Prabhu ki jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Srila Narottam Srinivas Yamananda Prabhu Trai ki jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Srila Swarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Gaur Parsida Vrinda ki jai. Naam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Navadvip Dham ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Dvar Shivanatmaka Shri Braj Mandala Dham ki jai. Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiu ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Purushottam Kshetra Dham ki jai. Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Shri Nrsinga Dev ki jai. Bhakta Prabhu Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Charodam Charo Sampradaya Charo Acharya ki jai. Akara Matraj Shri Chaitanya Mat ki jai. Or Ananya Shakamat Samuha ki jai. Shri Vishva Vaishnava Raj Sabha ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki jai. Shri Nectar of Devotion ki jai. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhajanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janavapataye Nama Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And that I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtotarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering my Dandavat Pranams at the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And my Dandavat Pranams to all of the Vaishnavas and all of the Vaishnavis. So we're continuing, probably we'll complete this tonight, the last paragraphs of the introduction to the Nectar of Devotion. Yes. Trying to find where we left off. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, Lord Chaitanya states that it is a fortunate person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. Now here Srila Prabhupada is talking about a particular verse. We've mentioned it many times. What is that? Brahmanda Brahmite, Kono Bhagyavan Jeev. So there, Lord Chaitanya is stating to Rupa Goswami that in this universe, Brahmanda, all the living entities are wandering. It's called Brahmite. Brahmite means to wander. So if you ever wanted to know what's going on in your life, that's what's happening. That's what's always been happening. And it's not good. It's not good that we're wandering and wandering throughout this universe in millions of species of life. Not good. Okay? So, but nevertheless, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling that amongst all those jivas that are wandering, and there are unlimited numbers of them, then he says, Kono Bhagyavan Jiv. Kono means one of them, someone. Kono, someone. Someone becomes fortunate. So we have to understand this. Actually, this is a very essential thing for neophyte devotees to grasp, to try to grasp. Because if someone can grasp this, then it will put everything into perspective about what you're supposed to be doing with your human form of life. If someone can grasp that it's not by chance that I have come in contact with the Krishna consciousness movement, not by chance ever, 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 for any jiva, because there must be the first pre-qualification that the jiva, after wandering, after acquiring sukritis, he now becomes fortunate. And that moment of good fortune is the greatest attainment of the jiva in all of his millions of lifetimes of wandering. What happens? He becomes fortunate, and that good fortune bestows upon him the opportunity to receive what? Guru Krishna Prasade Pai. Yes. He must receive the mercy of Guru and Krishna. And what form does that mercy take? Bhakti Lata Bij. The seed of the creeper of devotion. The beginning of our ultimate good fortune is when, by the mercy of Guru, by the mercy of Krishna combined, we receive the Bhakti Lata Bij. What form does that Bhakti Lata Bij take? It takes the form of Shraddha. And that is our golden treasure. Someone that has Shraddha in their heart is one of those category of jivas. Bhagyavan Jiv, fortunate. So now, Srila Prabhupada is stating that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Lord Chaitanya states that it is a fortunate person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. Cannot happen without that. This is mercy. This is the mercy that comes to the fortunate jiva. Bona fide spiritual master. One who is serious about spiritual life is given by Krishna the intelligence to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. And then, by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. In this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy, namely Krishna and the spiritual master. The whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy. It's not a mundane or material phenomenon. The more that one can recognize that and appreciate that, the more that they will advance in Krishna consciousness. We know that it does take some sukriti, special bhakti unmukha sukriti, to be able to understand this. But here it says that Krishna gives the intelligence to come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master. So we should know that this is always taking place because of the spiritual energy acting in that person's life. Krishna's arranging it all. And then when he comes in contact with the spiritual master, begins to hear from the spiritual master, then he enters into actual bhakti. Now, Prabhupada is saying this whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness, directly under spiritual energy, Krishna and spiritual master. This has nothing to do with the material world. Yeah.
How much should someone who's, practicing a little bit and has had initiation from a bona fide guru think that the events that are taking place in their life are under the guidance or mercy or something of Guru and Krishna, rather than just, karma and their previous karma and just, good or bad fortune? Like, are these things happening by Guru's arrangement for the development of this person's bhakti, or just because it's happening?
Yeah. So your question was, how much should the person what?
Think that, but what is happening in their life is by the arrangement of Guru and Krishna, or just simply the reactions of karma, I think.
Yeah. Well, we just heard it here. It has nothing to do with the material world. Great Prabhupada is saying. And that the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy. Krishna and the spiritual master. So, of course, the ability to embrace this truth, because it's true, it's not just your karma. If it was just your karma, you would never have come into contact with the spiritual master and Krishna and been introduced to the pathway of devotional service. That's for the jivas who have not yet become fortunate. I'll give you one little example comes to my mind. These big airplanes that we fly on, they have an automatic pilot system. The pilot puts it on automatic pilot and then it just flies itself. They oversee it and all of that, but actually the system on the airplane is doing everything, right? But then when they're starting to land, then the pilot starts to take over. But even the landing process is going on by the computerized system. So Srila Prabhupada used to say, an example of an airplane, that those who are not yet in contact with Krishna Bhakti, one day they will be, in some lifetime they will be. But those who have not yet come in contact, mostly they are like on automatic pilot, in the sense that there's their karma, everything's going on by their karma. But one who has now come in contact with spiritual master and is being given the opportunity to enter into the realm of pure bhakti, now Krishna is personally acting. He's personally looking after that jiva and arranging everything. Now we should understand this point, because the famous verse that I've quoted many, many times and the Srila Sridhar Maharaj speaks about in terms of the environment is always favorable. So that verse is the Tattenu Kampam Susamikshamano verse. So one time Srila Gurudev, he told the story that it was around 1991 before Gurudev came to the West, and Gurudev happened to be in Vrindavan at that time, and Satsvarup Maharaj, one of the leaders of ISKCON, was living in the same house that Gurudev was staying in at that time, because, the ISKCON leaders, they had been coming to Gurudev. They arranged something for Gurudev to stay in Vrindavan. There were some political problems in India at the time with the Muslims and so forth. So Satsvarup Maharaj kept a diary, and he wrote down all of his realizations of those days that he spent with Narayan Maharaj in the same house, the different interactions that he had with him. And we have that diary. But one thing is that Gurudev told the story that he asked Satsvarup Maharaj, who was a leading devotee in ISKCON, to explain the meaning of this verse, tatenu kampam susamikshamano, Vanjana evatma kritam vipakam, hridvag vapurbir, vidadan namaste, jiveta yo mukti pade sadayavak. So he asked Satsvarupa Maharaj, can you explain, do you know this verse, the meaning? And he said, yes, I know this verse. And he made the attempt to explain it. Now, the explanation that he gave was that a person who goes on tolerating the results of his previous karmas, sinful activities, and so forth, and at the same time goes on offering obeisances to the Supreme Lord from the core of his heart, gradually he attains mukti pade. In other words, dayabak actually means inheritance. So when a person is born into a family, then they automatically have a position of a legal inheritor at some point in their life of the wealth of that family. So that term is used in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is actually a verse spoken by Lord Brahma to Krishna when he was apologizing him for trying to steal his calves and cowherd boys. So Satsvarupa Maharaj gave that type of explanation. But Srila Gurudev then told him, he said, actually, that is a general understanding. But the real understanding of the verse is that actually Krishna is giving not just as an automatic the results of your previous sinful activities and bias activities and so forth. No, it's not just an automatic. Krishna is specifically dealing with the devotee and giving him or her certain experiences in their life which will bring about the necessary moods by which they can attain the highest good fortune. So it's, on one hand, we're feeling that, oh, I've committed many sinful activities and that's why I'm suffering. And that's necessary to feel that way, because even the pure devotees feel that way. Even the pure devotees feel like that I've committed so many sinful reactions. Okay, now I'm getting the result of it. I have to suffer this, I have to suffer that. But actually the deeper understanding is that Krishna's mercy, anukampa means mercy, tate anukampam. So actually Krishna is bestowing his mercy to the devotee by purifying him, by putting him through different experiences in life. Some are suffering, some are enjoyment, etc. But it's not that it's only like a huge mountain of karma is being eradicated. No, it's not just that. Although that's true. That is true, that whatever karmas are there, Krishna is giving little, what Prabhupada used to say, token punishment, like a token. You should have had your head cut off, but you just cut your finger, you know. And Prabhupada actually said, I read the letter in 1972. I remember this letter all my whole life. It was posted on the bulletin board in Dallas, Texas. And Prabhupada was answering a devotee's letter. But there, Srila Prabhupada said that whatever, you know, that devotee happened to be, he did not have good health after he came back from India. And he was asking Prabhupada's permission to temporarily live outside the temple so that he could recuperate his health and so forth. But what Srila Prabhupada said to him in that letter was that you should understand that what Krishna is doing, he's purifying you from millions of lifetimes of sinful activities by one insignificant suffering of something. One little insignificant suffering. He's actually taking millions of lifetimes and purifying you from that. So, I think main point is that the devotee has to think in that way, that I'm very sinful, I'm suffering, Krishna is being merciful to me, like that. But we should know there is nothing happening in our life by chance. Nothing. Every single thing that is going on in our lives is being bestowed by Krishna out of his causeless mercy to bring us closer and closer to him. Yes, so in this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. Even like, say, let's take your life, for example. Born in a devotee family, had all this opportunity. You chose a particular pathway. You chose a particular pathway that was quite a long-term endeavor to achieve certain thing, right? But the very fact that you even desire to do that, that's arranged by Krishna. Krishna knows past, present, future. He knows everything. He knows exactly what his devotee needs in every single situation, at every moment of their entire life and all future lives. So we should never think that the pathway, even if the pathway was the wrong pathway, because Krishna gives free will, but he also knows how to adjust the mistakes that the devotee makes in his selection with his free will. So Krishna knows everything. And one important point is that sincerity is invincible. I'm again saying that. Sincerity is invincible, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So that's, if we really in our life, in our heart, we're trying to be truthful and honest and understand things sincerely like that, and go toward the auspicious pathway, all of that, that sincerity will ultimately bring us, even if we're going on a big circle around, but Krishna, you cannot imagine what kind of, like Gurudev said, you cannot imagine what arrangement Krishna will make for you in your next life by just trying in this life sincerely, you see. And it's not going to take lots of lifetimes. Gurudev used to specify that if someone already had very auspicious beginnings and, you know, this was not the first lifetime, but he would actually say to some devotees, for you, maybe 2, maybe 3 lifetimes like this, which means that that devotee will be doing very, very serious bhajan. Because otherwise, it can actually go on, it can be extended for many lifetimes. Even Prabhupada used to say, the Kali Yuga is a very dangerous time, that we should be very careful, that because even something can throw us off course, we can take birth in an animal body. We'll have to go through a lifetime like that, you know. So we have to be careful, we have to be responsible, we have to be diligent. But that is all part of what is called sincerity, you know. So, when we speak of Krishna, we refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead along with his many expansions. He is expanded by his plenary parts and parcels, and his differentiated parts and parcels, that's us, differentiated, and his different energies. He is expanded by his plenary parts and parcels, that's his own expansions, by his differentiated parts and parcels, that's us, jivas, and by his different energies. Krishna, and it's in parentheses or quotes, Krishna, in other words, means everything and includes everything. What a sentence. Krishna, in other words, means everything and includes everything. But generally, however, we should understand Krishna to mean Krishna and his personal expansions. So when we speak of Krishna, we're speaking about the unlimited expansions of Godhead, and he is the supreme. So Krishna expands himself as Baladev, Sankarshan, Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Rama, Nrsimha, and Varaha, as well as many other incarnations and innumerable Vishnu expansions. These are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be as numerous as the uncountable waves. I always think like that about Krishna's incarnations. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ki Jai.
Think like what?
That like the innumerable waves, uncountable waves in the ocean, is described in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, that's the topic, incarnations of Godhead. That there are specific ones, but there's innumerable, actually. Unlimited expansions of Krishna's own personal self. So these are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam to be as numerous as the uncountable waves. So Krishna includes all such expansions as well as his pure devotees. Oh, Krishna also includes his pure devotees. Yeah. And especially we understand that in terms of the Panchatattva, because they are all, as a unit, they are all Krishna. That's why Panchatattva Atmakam Krishna. They're all Krishna. And Krishna also includes his pure devotees. His pure devotees. So, in the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Krishna's expansions, they are all complete in eternity, blissfulness, and cognizance. So, that Brahma Samhita, very nice to study. You know, in Rup Sanatan temple where I stay when I'm in Vrindavan, they're always chanting the entire Brahma Samhita every morning. Yeah. Whole Brahma Samhita. I mean, the Govindamadi Purusham prayers and Ishvara Parama Krishna at the beginning. So Brahma Samhita, very nice to have that in your repertoire, that you can know all those verses of Brahma Samhita, those prayers. All Tattva Siddhanta is there. So now Prabhupada says, devotional service means to prosecute Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and any activities which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. What did he just say? He's saying devotional service means to prosecute Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to what?
The pleasure of Krishna.
Yeah, the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And any activities which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. For example, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa, and Hiranyakashipu, they were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking cannot be accepted as bhakti or Krishna consciousness. Now, the impersonalists, they sometimes misunderstand devotional service in such a way that they divide Krishna from his paraphernalia and pastimes. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the impersonalists say that although Krishna is of interest, the battlefield of Kurukshetra isn't. The devotees, however, also know that the battlefield of Kurukshetra by itself has nothing to do with their business, but in addition they know that Krishna does not mean just Krishna alone. He is always with his associates and paraphernalia. For instance, if someone says, "Give something to eat to the man with the weapons," the eating process is done by the man and not by the weapons. Similarly, in Krishna consciousness, a devotee may be interested in the paraphernalia and locations, such as the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which are associated with Krishna. But he is not concerned with simply any battlefield. He is concerned with Krishna, his speech, his instructions, etc. It is because Krishna is there that the battlefield is so important. So the impersonalists, they take a different stance. And they separate Krishna from his name, form, qualities, pastimes, paraphernalia. They separate him from all of that because they're impersonalists. So this is not bhakti. Because wherever Krishna touches, wherever Gauranga Mahaprabhu went, that place has become completely pure and transcendental, and is a holy tirtha. That's why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur instructed that they should do these things. They should install what are called padapeets. Padapeet. They should install wherever Mahaprabhu went on his journey in South India. They should install like a mandap in that place where Mahaprabhu went. And you can see them. I know that there was at least 64 installed, but maybe more also. Because when Mahaprabhu goes anywhere, that place becomes transcendental. And that's why our Gurudev also applied the same principle to Srila Prabhupada. That he declared that I want to go to every single place, wherever Swamiji preached. And I want to take the foot dust, his foot dust from that place on my head. You see? So this is the proper understanding. Now, this is the summary understanding of what Krishna consciousness is. Without this understanding, one is sure to misunderstand why the devotees are interested in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But one who is interested in Krishna becomes interested in his different pastimes and activities. The definition, here we come now, the definition of a pure devotee. The definition of a pure devotee, as given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, can be summarized thus. His service is favorable and is always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep the purity of such Krishna-conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculation. Karma jnana. Any desire except for the service of the Lord, any desire except for the service of the Lord is called material desire. And philosophical speculation refers to the sort of speculation which ultimately arrives at a conclusion of voidism or impersonalism. This conclusion is useless for a Krishna-conscious person. Only rarely by philosophical speculation can one reach the conclusion of worshipping Vasudeva Krishna. And this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita itself. What is Prabhupada referring to? He's referring to Bahunam Janmanam Ante verse that we quoted one of these last days. Krishna is saying, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. That means after many, many births, that person who becomes Jnanavan, full of knowledge, Mam Prapadyate, he surrenders to me. And he understands Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. That means that Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvam. Sarvam means all. Everything is Krishna. Then he says, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Such a great soul is Sudurlabha, very rare. So Prabhupada is pointing out that it's very rare that through the process of philosophical speculation that someone will reach the conclusion of worshipping Vasudeva, Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita itself. The ultimate end of philosophical speculation, so many people are philosophizing and speculating. But what is the ultimate end of any attempt at philosophical speculation? He's saying here, the ultimate end of philosophical speculation then must be Krishna, with the understanding that Krishna is everything, the cause of all causes, and that one should therefore surrender unto him. If this ultimate goal is reached, then philosophical advancement is favorable. But if the conclusion of the philosophical speculation is voidism or impersonalism, that is not bhakti. So here Srila Prabhupada is speaking about the first two lines of the Anyabhilashita Shunyam verse. Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So Anya Abhilas. What is Anya Abhilas? Means other desires. Shunyam, zero. But there's a suffix attached to this Anya Abhilas. And what is that? Ita. I'm just giving you a little idea how exactly Rupa Goswami has composed this verse, and how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that we'll be reading it, how he has explained that those two syllables are two separate words. Ita means in and ta. In and ta. And what it's indicating is that, because here it's stating that pure devotional service, Uttama Bhakti, is completely devoid of any other desires. That's the first line. But why did he put Anya Bilash Ita? Anya Bilash Ita Shunyam. Because there can be a circumstance in which there can be, in an emergency situation, the devotee may call out to Krishna to save him. And that is not under the jurisdiction of other material desires because it's automatic and natural. So therefore, the suffix inta, ita, must be there. That's how carefully Rupa Goswami has composed this verse, to not exclude anything and to not include anything that is not exactly in the definition. Yeah, and then also in the analysis, there's a whole discussion about overextension of the meaning of something and underextension of the meaning of something. Okay, we're going to get into all that. But what Prabhupada is telling here is just very straightforward, is that unless this ultimate goal is reached, if this ultimate goal of philosophical speculation, understanding Krishna to be everything, the cause of all causes, and that one should surrender to him, and if this ultimate goal is reached, then the philosophical advancement is favorable. But if the conclusion of the philosophical speculation is voidism or impersonalism, that is not bhakti. Now he goes on to the second line. Karma, or fruit of activities, are sometimes understood to be ritualistic activities. So he's breaking down the second line. Jnana karmadi anavritam. What's the meaning of that line? Jnana karmadi anavritam.
These activities are not covered by jnana and karma?
No, that bhakti is not covered by jnana, karma, adi. What does adi mean? Beginning with. So he's not mentioning there the other activities that can also cover bhakti, but in the description by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he goes into that. How even too much tapasya, by Ashtanga Yoga, the desire for mystic powers, all of these different activities, basically it's Gyan, Karma, Yoga, like that. That's what Krishna covers in the Bhagavad Gita, mostly that. Gyan, Karma, Yoga. So Yoga is referring to Ashtanga Yoga generally. But there are Ashtanga Yogis who also have material desires to fulfill, and they're engaged in the process. So if someone is doing that, and it will be done to the extent that it covers your bhakti, then it's not favorable. Then it's not uttama bhakti. Now, here Prabhupada is talking about karma. So we should understand karma means fruit of activity. What is a fruit of activity? What does that mean? A fruitive activity.
An activity that bears a result.
Yes. Well, every action bears some result.
Yeah.
But a fruitive activity means that the person who's performing the action is desiring to get some result that they will enjoy.
That's what I meant.
So the people in the material world, we know that most of the persons fall into the category which they're called karmis. But a karmi means somebody who's involved in performing karma, which means actions. And they are desiring to get the fruit of that karma, karma phal, the fruit of their actions. So here, Prabhupada is saying karma or fruit of activities are sometimes understood to be ritualistic activities. There are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas. And Krishna goes into that in the Gita, where he's saying that they become very attracted to worship demigods, and they want to go to the heavenly planets, and they want to be wealthy, and all of this. So in the Vedas, there are different types of rituals that can be performed by which that person's material desires can be fulfilled. So there are many persons who are very much attracted by the ritualistic activities described in the Vedas. But if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. And that's the case with most persons, most Hindus. Most Hindus, they want to achieve material results. Yeah.
You mentioned a month or two ago about, you said Srila Siddhanti Maharaj told you something about what most Hindus...
That's right here in the temple room. He was, I'll repeat that, he was mentioning that in his experience, and he's born in India, he's born as a Hindu, you know, and his whole preaching career in India has involved interacting with the Hindu community there and trying to convert them to Vaishnavism and so forth, right? But he made a statement which I said, really? I was sitting here and he's sitting there, and I said, really? Because he said something that I hadn't really understood to that extent. He said that practically 99.9% of the Hindus, they don't have a transcendental objective. They're doing their religious activities for the sake of material gain only. Yeah. And I said, really? He said, yes. Yes. So that's unfortunate because, I mean, here these people are in contact with Vedic knowledge, Vedic civilization, to some extent in the polluted condition of the Kali Yuga. But because there's so many Mayavadis and impersonalists and all of that that have influenced Hinduism, therefore most of the people in Hinduism, they don't know anything about their religion. I've spoken with college-educated, many college-educated, even graduate students, you know, who grew up in a Hindu family, you know, and they actually admitted that throughout their whole childhood, their whole upbringing, they never were exposed to the knowledge of the Vedas, okay? Only rituals, only puja, all of this. These, of course, were persons who became devotees later in their life, you know. But their families have become so distanced. I mean, in the last 50, 100 years, you know, their families have become so distanced from even the cultivation of some form of bhakti. And everything is done with result-seeking desires, right? And it's and they've never read the Bhagavad Gita. They've not been exposed. These are very intelligent, brilliant people, but they've not had that opportunity. So that's the sorry condition of the Hindu population nowadays. But of course, Prabhupada even started a revolution there again when he brought his movement back to India. And ISKCON and their preaching, Gaudiya Math preaching, has had a powerful effect in India. So, yes. He says, actually, Krishna consciousness can be based simply on hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Described in the Srimad Bhagavatam are 9 different processes, besides which everything done is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. So, what does that say? That's saying that we know Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, the whole Navavida Bhakti, 9 limbs of Bhakti. If what someone is doing is besides this, is not including these 9 limbs, then everything that's being done is unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. Thus, one should always be guarding against fall downs. That's his last sentence of this paragraph. So, how do we understand this? It's very simple. It's very simple. These 9 limbs, analyze them. And hearing. If somebody is applying the process of hearing to something other than the topics of Krishna consciousness, now of course, when we say jnana karma anavritam, we have to understand that Rupa Goswami and the acharyas are saying everyone has to do some karma. Everyone has to have some jnana like that. So naturally we're going to be hearing different topics in our life. But there has to be a connection with bhakti. For example, if a person has a job that he has to go to, there's going to be all kinds of topics that he'll be hearing throughout the day that are not connected with Krishna, right? But what is the motivation of that person? The motivation of the person performing that work is, I'm a devotee of Krishna. My whole life is meant to serve Krishna. I'm performing this job to maintain my family, who are devotees of Krishna. Everything's connected to Krishna, you see. It can be transcendental. But what Prabhupada is saying here, thus one should always be guarding against fall downs, is to become too much absorbed. That's why the Upadeshamrita is there, giving very specific, don't do these 6, do these 6. And everything falls within that, you know. So Srila Rupa Goswami has also mentioned in this definition of bhakti the word jnana karmadi. This karmadi, fruitive work, consists of activities which are unable to help one attain to pure devotional service. Many forms of so-called renunciation are also not favorable to Krishna-conscious devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami has also quoted a definition from the Narada Pancharatra as follows. We mentioned this verse the other day. This is one of the definition verses. So Rupa Goswami is quoting this verse from Narada Pancharatra. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. This means one should be free from all material designations, upadis. And by Krishna consciousness, he must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So, when our senses are engaged for the actual proprietor of the senses, that means Rishikesha, that's Krishna's name, who is the Isha of everyone's Rishika. Rishika means senses. So Rishikesh means Krishna, the master of everyone's senses. When our senses are engaged for the actual proprietor of the senses, that is called devotional service. In our conditioned state, our senses are engaged in serving these bodily demands. And when the same senses are engaged in executing the order of Krishna, then our activities are called bhakti. Now we're at the end. This is the last short paragraph. As long as one identifies himself as belonging to a certain family, a certain society, or a certain person, he is said to be covered with designations. I, me, mine. When one is fully aware that he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy should be employed not in the interests of so-called family, society, or country, but in the interests of Krishna. This is purity of purpose and the platform of pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Purity of purpose and the platform of pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. So, obviously this is going to take some practice, right? But we have everything at our disposal. We simply have to follow the process sincerely. And then everything will take place. And then everything will become more and more focused on Krishna and serving him, serving Sri Guru, serving the Vaishnavas, like that. When one's life becomes completely focused in that way, then it's possible to enter into pure devotional service. So that's the introduction of the Nectar of Devotion. Gaur Premanandi. Jai Shri Rupa Goswami Pada Ki Jai. Jai Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha. Kripa Sindhu Bheva Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo.